sitting next to Hector Zaya from the Creative Club, Combat Coffee Club, and Mark Altieri. Today's lineup, Adrian Lorenzo. It's El Big League Show. Starting with Danny Enriquez.
Hey there. What's up, everybody? Welcome to El Big League Show. My name is Danny Enriquez, and I am here with former MLB exec, former star center fielder, right fielder for Penn, and one of the top artists in America, Adrian Lorenzo. How you doing?
I'm doing great, man. You could quickly cross-reference that stars does not apply right there. So, but thank you for that very generous intro. And as always, an exceptional one by Junior Alonso back there and the rest of the team. But excited, man. Excited to be, going on episode 5 here with you?
Yep. Still haven't kicked this off yet? Yeah, we're rolling, man. We're rolling. And I'll tell you who else is rolling. The Detroit Tigers, offensively, defensively, getting it done. Kind of the maestro here, AJ Hinch, which it's amazing looking at just his path, right? I don't think anybody's had this path. We talk about a major league ball player, involved in the personnel side as well when he's first getting started. Manager, obviously we know what happened. Some of his other stops, controversial. And then here with the Detroit Tigers. So what can you tell us about AJ Hinch, just kind of having that unique background of personnel playing and coaching, and then, of course, all the controversy and navigating that, and now getting this Tigers team ready to play baseball?
Yeah, well, first of all, the diversity of that experience, there's no way it's not valuable in terms of a manager putting on the uniform, doing the thing that the players are doing. It's the ultimate, the CEOs that do every level of the job. This is like kind of, along those lines. He's been on seen a lot of the views throughout the whole scale of this progression into manager, and now is in a position to leverage them most in this manager position. So I think there's no way it's not helping him directly right here. And I will say one thing, like regardless of context or circumstance, the Detroit Tigers feel like a different team in this kind of era of the Detroit Tigers. And right now there's not too many ways you can claim that there are 5 better teams than the Tigers right now. You don't want to put them at number 1, even though record-wise, it's kind of right there at the top of the whole league, not just their side of the league. But the Tigers have a different feel to them without playing, star-driven baseball. They have a lot of really good players, as we'll get through here, and they have a true legitimate star and ace in Tariq Skubal, but there's contributions from a really equally distributed part of the roster here and from some names that you wouldn't expect to be seeing in, along with the top names in baseball. So really, really good team baseball, it feels like. They go first to third really well. They do really good job outfield positioning too, matching up in the bullpen. I think, if you look back at the Astros during those years, right, a lot of the reasons they were good, they would play these odds often. They were known as a team to default to a lot of these kind of, if the percentage dictates that you should do this in this situation, they were among the teams, the Rays, a lot of other teams have, integrated this, but they were kind of at the forefront of those things back when it was, they still had the competitive edge and competitive advantage on it. And I think, therefore, they do the positioning, the matchups, the in-game decisions. I think they do those at a more optimized level because they're just, integrated and prepared on that front. And then I saw something, most 2 outs, like runners in scoring production with 2 outs is like a component to this too. So just overall playing really good team baseball on different sides of it without really being an elite defensive team. I think they're more middle of the pack there, but top offense, top pitching in baseball, or top 5, no matter which side you look at it. And that's a pretty good recipe for winning as well.
We talked off air, and you mentioned you touched on a little bit, the analytics to measure a manager is such an intangible thing, but there's certain situations that you can retroactively go back and look and say, hey, did we optimize or improve our chance to be successful in this situation?
Sure. And that's you're getting at the thesis of every post-game conversation with the front office that a manager has. Like, so if you have a good process where there's accountability and just like, hey, what happened here? Everybody's so locked in that they're going to be able to point at, you went with this lefty, you went with this matchup here, even though the matchup optimizer dictates that we should have gone here. And that's where the manager can kick in on the other side, be like, yeah, but I'm in the clubhouse with him. Like, he's, less available today. The confidence isn't there. Needed a day, needed 2 days. This guy feels better. Like, it depends. There's a really fine line between playing it completely subjectively and playing it by the odds. And I think the good managers toe both, even though from an accountability standpoint, your front office and your analytics group is going to be like, well, why didn't they do this in this scenario? That was a clear this. If we prepared for it in the advance meeting and it's on the sheet or it's on the iPad, but sometimes there's flow of the game things that are, you can't be tone deaf to your clubhouse and to the rest of your guys either. And front office and managers don't always and aren't always in sync. That's why I talked about the benefit of Mike Hazen and Torey Lovullo always being in sync. That's important in this dynamic as well, because you're going to get checked or you're going to get cross-referenced by your entire game preparation team, advanced scouting and analytics, and then the guys in the room post-game that need to discuss personnel decisions post-game, things like that. The most common thing that comes up is like, hey, why'd you go here or why'd you go there? And the manager kind of has to have a justification as to each of those beyond just like, oh, it just felt right in the moment. And I think that the Tigers have this a lot. They have a manager who has a high capacity to navigate good teams and playing high-level baseball. So I think you're seeing some returns from that.
And maybe that's where the fact that he was a major league player, so he knows what major league players are thinking. He was a front office guy, so he knows what the front office view of the situation is. And then, of course, he's sitting in the manager's seat. So I guess that those situations you're talking about, those meetings and those, when you walk through the thought process, he can sit in every seat, right? The manager, the front office guy, and the player, and have a personal, kind of reference point. Yeah.
The manager's so interesting to me, and I don't mean to get off track here, but the manager is a slept-on position in baseball, in my opinion, in terms of how wide the range of not only responsibilities, but talents and kind of places, things you need to be good and well and shored up in. And it's kind of like the GM in that you can't really not know what you're talking about in any room that you're in. And that's a lot of range, even though some guys have strengths in terms of the player that they were or how long they've been a manager or the analytical side. You still have to show the full range because it's still so human. You still have to be the forward face, the skipper of that clubhouse, with every single member of that clubhouse, player and staff. And so it always impressed me as to how difficult that job was, especially in the ones that are hot seats, that you always have to be good, because it takes a lot of different things to be really good in that position and just prepared on all fronts. And I just wanted to take a second to appreciate the managers and the jobs that they have to do, because I watch a lot of guys in their progressions into it, coaches now that are aspiring managers later. And I got to think it's kind of like a director on a movie set. You have to know everything. You have to be good at everything. If you can connect right to a player, that's seemingly the thing that I've seen move the needle most. But you also have to be accountable to your GM and to your ownership group. And that's a whole different conversation that you have to regularly have. And then you have to go and put on a straight face to the media and explain all your decisions in a way that no other of those positions have to be accountable for. So shout out to the managers, man. And it's a hard gig and it's hard to be good at it. And that's why the ones that are good at it, they stick around for a while and teams hold on tight. And even if you've navigated some controversies, the value of that thing is such that you'll get another chance at it if you kind of go through the process. And
you got to wear the uniform, right? It's not that slimming. You can't wear the nice suit or the polo, to make you look a little thinner.
That's right.
Switching gears now to the personnel side, where you came up. Spencer Torkelson is an interesting one to me. Right, first baseman. A lot of discussion, I remember at the time, about that profile going where he went in the first round. You think of an Andrew Vaughn for Chicago White Sox. Hasn't worked out yet. Maybe looking how Torkelson was looking before. Now they're starting to see some of the reason they took him at that spot. Walk me through not just Torkelson, the player, but kind of that profile and how you look at it and how other people in your seat have looked at that position.
My position on first base has evolved, and also it's ping-ponged in different directions. At first, I knew it's where I thought you had to be kind of equally distributed, good and defensively and good offensively. My evolution taught me like you need to get offense from the first base position, period. Like there's only so many places you can get true offensive players, and first base is a place you need to get offensive production out of. That said, it's also the most consequential guy in the infield because he touches the ball on almost every ground out. So it's sneaky more important than you think. I remember watching Mitch Moreland back in the day, seeing how much there was a direct correlation to the rest of that infield being better because Mitch Moreland was really good, not only ground balls, but as a first base receiver. So I think that gets underrated in the game. I think teams are doing a better job of almost like we grade catcher receiving. You're like grading first base receiving.
Yep.
Because if you look at some of these plays, they're really difficult plays that first baseman will bail out, another player on, and that moves the needle too. The problem is those two things don't always travel together. Offensive ability and defensive ability at first base. Because usually those guys are playing shortstop, third base, up the middle. But there's a lot of first basemen that start, more up the middle. And I think the right first baseman, you can be an excellent right first baseman and right anything and be fully productive. I think where it shifts is that if you look at it from a free agency standpoint, you just have more options that are right first base profile in either major league free agency or minor league free agency, right? And I think Pete Alonso ran into this a little bit in free agency this year, where it's just not a profile that teams regularly go out and stretch for. It was the reason Torkelson going 1 as a right first baseman was even controversial at all, right? And I don't think it was, and it's what I'll circle all the way back to with Torkelson, because I watched him in college for a series against Cal, Andrew Vaughn versus Spencer Torkelson. There were some other good players in that series playing as well. But he was the most dominant player in college right there. It was a clear number 1 selection. You can the way it's played out after looks different, but at the moment there wasn't much wiggle room in who's getting selected at the top here. And it just puts a lot of pressure on the bat being really, really good. But I also think what you see here is even for an advanced college player, the progression into the big leagues is not just like you show up and you just like hitting in the big leagues is hard as shit. And sometimes it takes a little longer to figure it out. And sometimes it's worth the wait to figure it out. Like I think the Tigers are seeing here with Torkelson, because I think if you go back to his collegiate stuff, just flashing by him, it's stupid numbers in that 1 year where he had to be really good. So, and he was really good defensively too, because he was a third baseman playing first base, transitioning over. So I have no hate at all for the right first baseman. I just understand in the roster construction phase, it's not priority 1. But Torkelson, it wasn't like it was expected that somebody else was going to be number 2 pick and that he would be the number 1 pick. That's how dominant he was at that time. And that's how it turned out.
Well, look, Torkelson, I don't think he'll ever close that gap, but at least it's not as profound as it looked last year, a couple years ago. So good on Spencer Torkelson getting together. We think of big names on this Tigers team. There's not a ton of them, but obviously Javi Baez, who we've talked about on this show, is one of those. Another one who is having a little bit of a resurgence here, Gleyber Torres, one of the better free agent signings of the offseason. What have you noticed from Torres? With Baez, it's clear, right? Because he's changing positions. There's a lot, and the swing decisions, the whole thing we talked about. With Torres, what's allowing him to have more success here in maybe a lesser spotlight with the Tigers?
I think Gleyber Torres has always been a really good hitter, a really good player overall, and I think the Tigers he's less lost in that lineup of the Yankees, and a little less microscope. And I'm not knocking Gleyber Torres for that at all. I think it's just a little bit of a relief of pressure that every night, every at bat, everything getting magnified isn't necessarily the case with the Detroit fan base, and that can be freeing for a player, I imagine, to just play with without that microscope. And there are pockets in your career where you're ready for that microscope. Gleyber had to come up in that. And that's a whole other, he was traded in the Chapman deal, I think, from the Cubs. Yep. And it kind of had to come up as a prospect through that Yankee. And other guys have done it, and it fits. And he was really good for them. And I always remember seeing Gleyber Torres' production numbers as you're looking at the Yankees if you match up with them in a trade. And it was always a guy that you're like, yeah, I'll take that if I can get it. If in a return we can get Gleyber Torres, that's offense at either the shortstop, third base, and second base positions. I think second base is probably the one he's best suited to. But you're looking at it right now. I mean, he's one of the better hitters in the league, one of the better contributors in the league right now. The numbers aren't eye-popping, but I think in that clubhouse and on that team, he's moving the needle a lot. And a lot of these bar graphs are all the way to the right. Squared up percentage, chase percentage, whiff percentage, and he's just not striking out at all.
That's an interesting trade to revisit there. When you talk about the Chapman for Torres, kind of reminds me of Yugi Urbina for
Adrian Gonzalez.
For Adrian Gonzalez,
yeah.
Because you can't say either side lost,
nope.
Right? For what they were trying to accomplish in the trade.
Context matters.
So,
yeah,
I'd like to see that when two teams, we talk about so many times, one team just looking terrible and the other team, winning huge. Right. Sometimes they both win, right? Now with Gleyber Torres having some success in a new spot, but obviously paid his dues there with the Yankees.
And that trades have their waves of when it values or impacts you the most. And then sometimes, that prospect goes on to be an established big leaguer for a long time at a position that you would probably eventually end up needing. But in that moment, Aroldis Chapman in that 9th inning, when your team is there, it's kind of hard. I would rather go for it and, try to win. That's winning a World Series, man, or having a shot at it. If you have it, you take it. Yeah. And I'll never credit a GM for being overly aggressive on that side.
The Chicago Cubs at that point, I mean, the ultimate example of you gotta go get it because it doesn't happen every single year. Reese Olson, want to talk about his profile, and really a lot of these Tiger pitchers we're going to talk about have similar strengths and weaknesses, at least according to their production this year on Baseball Savant and some of the pitch mix. With Olson, high school kid, 13th rounder out of Gainesville, Georgia, 25 years old, one of the unluckiest pitchers in the game as far as run support earlier in his career. I know you've seen that dynamic with the Marlins where you had pitchers that were just throwing gems and not necessarily getting the support. Before we even get to his arsenal and what he's been doing effectively, being a pitcher that's losing games when you're having quality starts consistently, how does that affect their mentality? Like, how do you keep guys focused on what they're doing well when they're having these heartbreaking losses and great performances?
I think in this particular case, it'll go back to like a good manager. Like a manager can convey the message that like, hey, we didn't win tonight. It didn't break our way, but if we replicate what you just did tonight over however many 25 starts, like it's going to happen good more than it's going to happen bad. And so that manager, or even that GM in those rooms, like, cause sometimes like the GM and manager are working in sync with each other and be like, hey, our numbers can see through the loss or the higher ERA tonight. Or, manager could say things like, hey, could have taken you out a little earlier here. Could have like left you in that spot, this, that. But you can set the tone on like, keep going, see through this. But some players still have to be accountable to each other too. And players see things more like loss, ERA, bump, like you still want to have good numbers outwardly. But it doesn't inspire confidence when you're executing and losing. That's tough, right? But I think that's where scoring runs offensively just kind of bails you out of all of that. Right? Like it's hard to be a team that just wins on margins and small margins. That's less sustainable. So the offensive teams like the Tigers right now, they're scoring runs at a rate at the top level of the league. So kind of takes a lot of the pressure off the pitcher. Your pitching still has to be good, but you kind of pitch differently. You pitch more aggressively. You pitch more confidently with a lead. It's a whole different dynamic. But you lose a lot of games, you gain an appreciation for the win. And so that's what they're experiencing now. So he's leveraging, all those lessons of losing those games. Now you're on a good team with the offense to get you runs and win games. And now you pitch with a little more confidence. And now your stuff gets to show up. Like he's in the 96th percentile in off-speed run value and 88th percentile in whiffs overall, which is a lot of it is that changeup that he throws a lot. But yeah, a guy that's carrying him. I think he's second in WAR for pitchers on that roster. And I don't know. We can talk all day on Skubal as well. Like there's got to be some osmosis effect to watching that guy work, especially with a changeup. Like he uses that changeup a lot, and you're pitching after Skubal, or around him. I don't know. There's got to be some osmosis effect there.
We're seeing a lot of different backgrounds for these pitchers. So Skubal, college pitcher, didn't pitch that great in college, and then becomes what he is now. You look at Olson, 13th round high school pitcher, right? And then, you talk about Mize, number 1 overall pick out of Auburn, Jackson Jobe. There's different kinds of players in this staff. Before we even get off Olson, because I'm curious about this, the 13th round, 12th round, 14th round high school player.
Yep.
I don't know if that changes now in the NIL era with guys having opportunities to go to college and make money. Just how does a pitcher like this, who is I'm sure he was showing something in high school that allowed him to get drafted in the first place. How does he go in the 13th round and then become what he is now as a 25-year-old?
The simplest way I could put it is that not all timeline, the player development timelines are different. There are different times when a player is ready to be showcased for his capitalization moment, the draft, or internationally for his signing period. Some players find their strides later, 18, 19, 23, 27. Some guys find it. Rich Hill would find it later in his mid-30s. Nick Martinez in his early 30s. These things, if you believe in player development, you know about it, you know that there's a wide range of outcomes. Juan Soto shoots right there. Bobby Witt shoots right there. Not everybody takes that path. And there's up, down, up, down. And to me, it's the guys who obsess in the off seasons nowadays that go and figure out their arsenal, that go and work in sync with their front office to go find the right pitch mix and grip that works for them. If you believe in player development, it's more okay, yeah, it makes sense why maybe you weren't ready out of high school and you get selected in the 13th round. That's why you see a lot of college guys get selected twice. Somewhere out of high school and then maybe earlier in college. And I think that means they flashed something that's signable, but maybe they were committed to a big-time Power 4 conference, so a 13th round pick with a $75K bonus wasn't going to move the needle too much. So you go to college, but for some kids, that $75,000 and that 13th pick is all you wanted to do, play professional baseball and get right into it. Your family needs that money. Every situation is highly, highly different. So I don't know the mechanics of what led him to being in the 13th round, almost a 400th pick overall in 2018. But I've just watched a lot of these happen in the draft room where a lot of arms look interesting. But everybody has a story. Everybody's didn't start playing baseball until now, has been playing third base up until now. Now he's starting to pitch. I can't point to one reason why he slides, but guys slide. And then just thinking about it as myself, yourself, you get better with age. I don't think anything I did at 17, 18, 19, 20, physically maybe, but mentally and emotionally.
I was about to say, I can think of a couple things.
Yeah, no, but mentally, emotionally, I'd rather have the wisdom of where I'm at now to make decisions than so young then. And player development is tough, man. It's tough to get to the big leagues, and it's even tougher to stay. And so when guys do it from these middle ranges, that just shows scouting is hard too. It's hard to get these things right at such a long distance. You know what I mean?
Well, look, it's interesting because the next guy we're going to talk about was the first overall pick, but similar story. It was a winding road, a lot of injuries to get to the point where he is looking productive. I mean, not unlike Torkelson as far as it took a while to see why he was the number 1 overall pick, at least consistently. He's had injuries. He's actually injured right now. Sounds like it's not serious with a hamstring strain. But, Casey Mize, first overall pick out of Auburn. Look at the Savant page, similar here to Olson in terms of the fastball lower in the profile, the off speed, really doing some work. So, what do you see with Mize and what he's able to be so effective?
I think to the draft question of Casey Mize, another one with Torkelson where you get why he gets selected first round. Big physical right-handed starter with a bulk of innings build up at Auburn, and it's kind of hard to stare that right in the face and be like, nah, this guy that's been dominating the SEC and just showing he's the best pitcher in college baseball with physicality, with stuff. Makes total sense why he was taken 1-1 that year. Another case, the big leagues, it's not an upward trajectory right into it. You get hurt. Pitchers have this injury thing, which is a whole other thing they have to navigate, that position players have to navigate it too, but I see a higher bounce back rate from almost any injury with position players than shoulder injury, for example. Shoulder injuries derail more pitching careers than I've ever seen. It's to the point where you'll see an elbow and you'll know he has Tommy John, and you'll know there's a bounce back rate to this that you're comfortable with. Shoulders is more opaque. There's more going on in the shoulder, that socket, that joint. cartilage, slap tears, rotator cuff, kind of where your pec meets your shoulder and on the other side as well, lat stuff. It's just, there's a lot of stuff that they deal with, and it complicates the journey and the assessment overall. But again, player development, you stick it out and you bet that there's a reason that this should work. And if it's in the strike zone, it does. And then he's in, for me, it's not so much the off speed with him, it's the breaking ball, like the value, like 98th percentile in breaking ball run value. That to me means that his pitch, his breaking balls, it's more of a slurve, slider mix. I think it's just a lethal pitch in baseball right now. He can go to it any pitch, any count. True pitchability of a starting pitcher. Throws enough strikes to not get into walk trouble. After a while, you see how that could play over 25, 30 starts or a big league season, health dependent. But I like to see the guys drafted high make it as much as I see the guys in the mid rounds, because it's not a no pressure situation to make it as a number 1 overall pick. Actually, you can make the argument that it goes in the other direction too. And
look, you see the fortunes of this franchise kind of rising with these guys. Once they've gotten right, the Torkelsons, the Mize, we'll see on Jackson Jobe. Now you see Riley Green, right? You see when those guys start performing, everything else looks a lot better, right?
Rising tide.
So switching to another pitcher here who's more of a veteran, 35-year-old righty, Tommy Kahnle. From Lynn University in Boca, our neck of the woods. Mm-hmm. Spent a lot of time with the Yankees. Another guy, breaking ball and off speed there with Tommy. So what do you see with this? He's a young man to us at 35, but this veteran, what he's able to get done.
Awesome career that he's had, and right now he's 84% changeup. Like that's to 15% fastball right now, and the sliders like kind of doesn't really use it much, but the fact that shows that that's an 80 pitch in baseball, or a top of the scale level pitch that it's coming, and you still he throws something else just enough to get you off of it, but it's devastating right now, and he gets that ball on the ground at a 90th percentile clip. He's prevents hard contact on the bottom side of the barrel, almost leads the league in average exit velocity, and it's that pitch, that changeup is in the 99th percentile in pitch value in baseball, and it's coming. You remember Koji Uehara?
Yep.
Remember that name?
Yep.
Saved a lot of games for the Red Sox back in that 2013 run. Koji Uehara was throwing 84-mile-an-hour fastballs and was just 70% splitter. It's coming, and you still can't do much with it because there's a deception factor. There's a comfort. In this case, I think it's movement. It's just a sick movement pitch. It's hard to pick up, and he throws a fastball 15%, just enough to keep you honest or establish an early strike early in the count, but then it's bread and butter changeup, and that's hard to pitch like that. Ask any reliever, they have to pitch with a complementary arsenal, but this guy does it with heavy changeup usage, and it's dope. It's cool to watch.
All right, so talking about a guy who uses his changeup quite a bit. Now we're going to talk about one of the most powerful fastballs in our lifetimes, who's really getting it done actually more with his breaking ball here, and that is Jacob deGrom. So love seeing him back. Love seeing him look healthy. Fastball seems like the velo's back. It's up to 97, but really it's the breaking ball, 100 percentile. Fastball still, that velocity is there, but the effectiveness is not caught up to the breaking ball yet. I don't know if that will come with time, but overall it's working. You got the 90th percentile with Jacob deGrom. So what do you see with him, and how is he different than when we last saw him at the peak of his powers?
Right now, I think he's in a progression toward it. I think anytime you hit 35, 36, that's when pitchers start to go the other direction here. So I'm not saying he's finding a mid-20s, late 20s groove in terms of stuff, but the velo's back to a good spot. What I do remember from Jacob deGrom, and he's my generation's, at least when I was an executive in the game, he was the best pitcher in baseball. And he on every front, analytic front, arm mechanics, way to do it. He was a shortstop who converted to pitcher, so really athletic. He would also later be connected to Yuri Perez for me, because I remember seeing Yuri, and at the time, what's the best case scenario you could want to have? And it was Jacob deGrom, this big, right-handed, smooth delivery. with really good data. deGrom is an analytics darling just as much as a scouts and pitching coaches. It's just a fluid, clean delivery. I don't know, during my heyday of working in baseball, he was the best in the game, and we saw him a lot playing Marlins against Mets, and it was just a problem. It was a problem every matchup. His command was best in the game with all pitches, but especially with that fastball and establishing that fastball early, and he could get you to chase and expand. Jacob deGrom, to me, is a Hall of Famer. I think it's saying something obvious, but even if you trapped a 5-year window of his career, those 5 years and that dominance was such that in my book, he would always be one of the best pitchers I've ever seen, period, live. And it feels like he's still borrowing from a lot of that, and he's still Jacob deGrom.
Yeah, I remember in 2016, right? The Marlins with Jose Fernandez is right before he passed.
Yep.
Right? And then you had deGrom and you had Scherzer with the Nationals. So remember, you had all the best right-handers, most talented right-handers. You'd see him every single week. It felt like you see one of those guys. I personally thought Jose Fernandez was the best one just because I'm biased, right, on that one. But to see all those guys side by side, it was incredible. And you really, now looking back, it's not like that comes around every single couple of years. That was a pretty rare thing to have all three of those guys in the same division.
And that Mets rotation back in that day, Matt Harvey, Syndergaard, a young Zach Wheeler was a prospect and all that. They had some dudes there, and Jose's still the most talented in my opinion. That I like, the funnest to watch. But there was something about like advanced preparing for Jacob deGrom. You're like, go get him, guys. Good luck today. In his heyday, if you go to like that whole run of 2017, 2018, 2019, you could play this. I'll do the progression on the edit, but like you could play, all the bars are red all the way through to the other side for a full 4-year window. And yeah, we'll go down as one of the best of all time. And I don't know, man, you can find a pocket. Justin Verlander's been pitching late in his 30s for a while here. Garrett Cole seems like he's positioned to do the same. Like you can find a back end of a career, Nate Eovaldi, guys that find this, Charlie Morton, this longevity at the back end, because you had such pitchability that even if you're suffering a downtick in stuff, you can still find a way to win ball games. And you're still, in a playoff series, you're still Jacob deGrom. Or like in a playoff matchup, Scherzer shows up. Scherzer's another great one. Scherzer shows up in a playoff match. You don't think like, oh, he's not primetime Scherzer anymore. You're like, he can reach into the tank and give one of his classic performances. And I think deGrom is in that. He's kind of in that pocket, in that territory.
Going to someone who plays another Jacob that played deGrom's old position, right, which is Jacob Wilson. I saw this guy in person with the A's last week when he came down. It's 6th pick, Grand Canyon. You see why he was the pick as far as just seeing him move around, wiry, good athlete. But then he gets in the box and it's so bizarre. We'll talk about the mechanics of the swing. Mm-hmm. But really, to me, what jumps out is just looking at the way he's getting it done on the Baseball Savant page. So walk rate, 10th percentile.
Yep.
Chase rate, 16th percentile.
Yep.
But he's 100th percentile in K rate. First percentile in bat speed. Squared up percentile is 99th. Barrel, 6th percentile. Hard hit, 5th percentile. So help me make sense of how this guy is making so much good contact without having seems like a ton of twitch and power in his bat. And really the swing decisions are kind of not exactly how you draw it up. So
I think they're great, actually.
Tell
swing
me,
decisions, I think, he's not walking. He
on paper.
Some guys are having aversion to they're high contact guys innately. But if you look, he's not chasing the ball either. So to me, the league is going to correct to like chasing you outside the zone. The problem with a pitcher living outside the zone is that you don't get strike one. So like it's kind of tough. Like Luis Arias his page would look like this on any given day. Maybe on the lower end, the bat speed, but high barrel percentage, squared up percentage, low K rate, low whiff rate. So like whatever you put in the zone, he's going to hit it. And pitchers want to live in the zone more than they want to live outside of the zone. Any pitcher that tells you he wants to start 1-0, 2-0 to set a hitter up, you want to get to strike one as quickly as possible. And if he's jumping your best strike one or just not chasing your balls and squaring it up at a high level, all he's got to do is put the ball on a higher trajectory, line drive or fly ball. There's a lot of success and money to be made in the big leagues there. It's hard to not swing and miss at this level, though. Like that, and that's so. I think he does make good swing decisions because he's not chasing. Now, I think over his career, he'll get to a point where, like, okay, can he condense that into pull side power? And then you'll take that 2-0 pitch low and away, and you'll take it as a strike because you know you want to pitch more in your red zone. He's young in the league. He's up there, see ball, hit ball. But if you're covering fastballs and not chasing breaking balls, you can have a lot of success at the shortstop position. It's impressive what he's doing, to be honest. It's really, and how quickly he's gotten there and established, and he's kind of fun to watch on defense too.
Oh yeah.
The move to the baseball is really interesting. We were talking about this pre-show. He does like a double toe tap, starts open, steps again, and then steps again. Kind of progressively steps closed. And I wonder if this is not a trend, because I've seen some guys work this in, but it's an established double move to the baseball, which is some guys just go leg kick up and go, some guys knee turn or toe tap, or guys have all sorts of different timing mechanisms. This is a different one. And I think we're going to see a lot of kids trying this. We're like, hey, like in this era where people are complaining about how much people strike out, here's this guy not striking out, having success. I think you might see some hitting philosophies, hitting coaches at least absorb or try this with a struggling hitter, because it seems like he's just on time. This move is allowing him to have a fluidity of being on time. Like if you watch it, he's a little bit of a herky-jerky player overall. It's not like a high degree of fluidity, but it really works. It's a good move to the ball. He's on time a lot. I like this player a lot, and I think he's having his rookie moment. And the A's are sneaky better than everyone thinks.
Oh yeah, and they got different kinds of players.
Yeah.
With this one, what I'm trying to figure out, because obviously he has a twitch defensively to play shortstop.
Sure.
At least right now, he's 6th pick of the draft. But then you look at the bat speed being first percentile, and then the squared up percentile 99th. That's the part that, just looking at the paper, I'm trying to visualize. So how does somebody have what, at least being measured the way this is a slow bat, and be so hard to get whiffs on?
Guys start from different positions. Their load, their move gets them to different positions, and they get there a different way. Some guys get there with a big negative move. I've talked about that. Their arms go back, and there's an elasticity component. Those guys tend to generate more bat speed. The super top of the scale strong guys, Giancarlo Stanton, those guys generate bat speed just by, a lot of things, but brute strength just kind of being one of them. But other guys get to a set position where the speed from where they set doesn't jump off, but that doesn't mean it's a slow bat, because they're still there. It's just their timing move to get there, and where that reading starts registering your bat speed. If you've entered the zone slowly, but you kind of quicken up through, which is what it looks like Jacob Wilson does, it's going to register you as having a slow bat path, but no pitch is getting by him. 100 percentile in K rate and 100 percentile in whiff rate. So it's not just not striking out, it's not missing pitches at all that you swing at. Because the whiff rate would get you if you're 2-0 out of your ass swinging at a changeup, but he's not doing that either. So making an argument that you don't need top of the scale bat speed, but I would also say that 1 percentile is deceiving, because he's got, there's bat speed in there when you watch it. Any scout would look at it and be like, he doesn't lack bat speed. He just kind of starts from a place that wouldn't register as fast bat speed. Guys get into the zone at different times in different ways.
He's got 3 home runs, 465 slugs, so it's not just all singles. Is the fact that he's kind of coming in slow and then speeding up allowing him to get more contact? Is that part of it, that he just has more time to adjust, kind of get to there? Is that does that work hand in hand?
I think, any hitter, I spent a lot of time around Chili Davis in the batting cage, and his was always preaching, be on time, be early, way better than be late. So whatever gets you in, if you got to hold an early position, let's work on that, as opposed to, kind of trying to catch up always. I think he was a big proponent of that. Chili Davis hit 400-something home runs from both sides of the plate in the big league. Shout out Chili Davis, legend. But I remember him preaching that a lot, and it goes back to what I said earlier. He seems like he's on time more often than he's not. It's the only way you can do what he's talking about. Now, also because you're a rookie, like, we'll see how the league adjusts to you in the second half of the season. Nobody does the same thing over and over in the big leagues without some correction, some adjustment. His ability to not chase, his margin for that is slim. If he starts to chase, now very few hitters tell you the best hitting is outside of the zone. It's always in the zone. That said, the pitcher's got to come in there at some point. So, I don't know. This one's going to be a really interesting one to kind of see how this plays out. He's getting some rookie grace in terms of pitchers are going to challenge him. He doesn't have that reputation that he's going to be pitched around, so he's going to get challenged, and he's taking advantage of those pitches in the zone. So whatever they're doing, don't change it and don't overcorrect yet. As long as you don't chase, there's a lot of money to be made in just crushing fastballs in the big leagues. Not everybody can pitch without their fastball.
Just turned 23, drafted in 2023, already making these kind of waves at the major league level. And like you said, interesting team, seeing them live. Different body types, different ways to attack you with the position players. So it was an interesting ball club.
I like them. I like watching them on any given night. They're, this baseball's better when everybody's good, or when everybody is like kind of in it, and the teams that you don't expect to be good kind of sneaking in there. I don't like this dichotomy of top-ended teams and then bottom-ended teams. And I think the draft lottery has neutralized a lot of this, because you could have the second worst record and end up with the 7th overall pick. So there isn't that tight correlation between being at the bottom and getting these organization-changing players at the top of the draft. So I like that, and I like this, especially as they kind of roll into this Las Vegas deal. It's a painful rip of the Band-Aid for everybody in Oakland, so I don't want to be non-sensitive to that, but the A's have a good young team, and they like went out and like timed some free agents, right? And I don't know, just signed an extension with Lawrence. Like, done some good, interesting things, and this is what you need to have happen. You need your own drafted players to show up and do an optimal scenario. Draft him in 2023. By 2025, he's your everyday shortstop in the big leagues, putting up all sorts of top of the league numbers. That's a dream scenario for a scouting director, for example. So shout out to the A scouting department in that sense. That's what you would hope for in a best case scenario.
It's interesting. I pulled their baseball reference page. Just the Athletics. That's the name is Just the Athletics. So still getting used to that.
Yep.
One, it's like Prince. Just one name. But yeah, I mean,
there's a grace period where you're going to have to still call them, whatever it is. It's hard to call them Sacramento.
Right.
The Athletics.
The Athletics.
I love the timeless. We got to use them for a design segment at some point later on. That's like a OG uniform that it was my favorite uniform as a kid.
Me too. You were born when?
88.
So you grew up kind of with the Marlins.
Yeah,
pretty much.
very much so. Yeah.
For me, I'm a little older than you. So the A's were the team because Canseco was Cuban. So people in Miami liked the A's. Ricky Henderson was my favorite player. So that was kind of, some people like the Braves because they were here.
And TBS.
On TV, right.
Yeah.
Some people like the Yankees because they were big in Cuba. So the parents liked the Yankees. But people my age tended to like the A's because, first of all, they were the champions at that time. Right. That was their kind of their heyday. Ricky Henderson. But then Canseco was the man. This was before they took his name off the streets.
Right.
So, A's got a place in my heart. But yeah,
they always had the coolest aesthetic, that yellow and green. And it was like the Bash brothers with McGuire, Canseco, Ricky Henderson with the shades, Dennis Eckersley with the, and they had a huge run back in the 70s as well. And so they had this history, and they were one of the original OG organizations in all of baseball. Connie Mack,
right?
Like back into the history of it. There's always been an athletics in baseball kind of thing, and Moneyball, that whole era was kind of sparked my interest in front office baseball overall. So they've always played this consistent theme, and they've been down in these few years, but they were competitive for a long stretch, and I hope that they are again. I'd like to see that division get a little more up for grabs.
No, Soderstrom, talk about Rooker, Kurtz, if he gets going, a lot of power to go along with the contact profile that we just talked about at shortstop. So interesting mix of guys here.
Hope you have the Cubs model from the Cubs we were talking about, the Epstein era Cubs, of a young position player core being developed together. And then kind of into Las Vegas, you have this opportunity to pop the free agents because you have a young, controllable position player core. And that's, as a front office, that's like the dream scenario too. It doesn't always happen that way. It's hard to time it all up together.
Yeah, Langoliers too is kind of, if you look at the Orioles, it's not that much different, right? If you look at, replace Rushman with Langoliers, and it's kind of similar guys out there. I'm not saying they're going to have that success, but having seen the Orioles up close pretty recently and seeing the A's, you can kind of visually it doesn't look that different. And you had that top 10 pick catcher as the sort of the first piece of it.
Yep.
Right, because he was the first one that they put in this core. If my timing is right, because that was 2019. That was before the pandemic. So I think he was kind of the first step of what you see now, which is pretty good way to build a top 10 catcher.
I think if I was sitting in any of those seats, like, and hey, do you want like a elite level pitching staff, that like a young pitching core, or a like kind of really solid grouping of position players that you could work around and build around? I think I'd take the position players, and that's no disrespect to the pitchers. I've just seen the other side of that evolution where you maybe like decide the pitching and the defense will, and I don't think that that's as contemporary with Major League Baseball. I think it's like you have to have a position player core that scores enough runs at a high enough rate to be a relevant baseball team. It's really, really, really hard today to pitch and defend your way into relevance. Just because Major League Baseball is hard and the games are won on the margins. And if you live with a shorter lead often, you're going to lose baseball games. And so having a young core of position players it's like what you would optimally build towards. Now, that usually, historically, has taken a lot of down years to build up that capital or build up that position player pool. But now I think we're seeing some like quicker to the big leagues draft to like playing right now, this Nick Kurtz episode, that speeds up the process a lot. And I think it's connected to college baseball being really good. And so like guys that get the chance to play college, they're seeing a level of development that's different than previous eras. It's more professionalized college baseball. And you're able to make the transition a little more seamlessly, in my opinion.
Well, catcher from Baylor, right? First baseman from Wake Forest, center fielder from Vanderbilt.
Yep.
Wilson from Grand Canyon. So you kind of see all those pieces come together from the college level, man. It's going to be interesting to see how that trend continues as the NIL era gets deeper in. Somebody who came from a whole different process, Maikel Garcia from La Sabana, Venezuela. I know you wanted to talk about this guy and some of the things he's doing. Just really a nice looking profile at the plate. Obviously has versatility on defense. What do you see from Garcia?
I see the dream scenario outcome for like Latin American middle infielders from La Sabana, which is a really interesting place in Venezuela. Shout out La Sabana and the good friend scout that is from that area and is part of that like large Escobar family. Alcides Escobar, Ronald Acuna is from there. Now Maikel Garcia adding his name. I find it so interesting when a guy from these spots makes it, and then the impact that you have on all those kids in that area and that, so that area in particular as like a per capita production has a lot of really good players that I'm leaving off the list here in terms of quality from La Sabana. But it's kind of part of Caracas. It's like closer to the La Guaira airport area in Caracas, and it's just a really fruitful place for baseball players. A lot of family members, like a lot of big connected families up there. And, Maikel Garcia, to me, he was interesting. I remember him a lot because back when I was working with the Marlins, there were all these ways to measure a player without like registering who his name was or seeing him. There's like not Robo Scout, but like you're measuring the sprint speed, the tools, the production, the out conversion, the bat speed, this, the that. So you can kind of comprehensively spit those into something that looks at the player like a scout and be like, oh, that guy. But it was like, it wasn't matching the stats, but it's like, hey, this guy's tools are like kind of traveling in this really interesting group, even though the production isn't, like power production isn't right there. But just a player of having a lot of really interesting plus tools, clicking with a good team and a good system in the Royals, and finding an offensive groove where he was maybe like a defensively oriented player that had versatility, could play shortstop, could play third base, had the defensive stuff in spades, but now always had enough of a hit tool to be like, oh, this guy's playing really good defense with like a pretty good hit tool. And then now he's taking that, like what happened this offseason is what I would ask. I'd ask Kansas City, like, hey, whatever happened this offseason, continue that, like keep hammering that hard. And this is one of the best middle infielders in baseball today, as we stand today. 94th percentile squared up percentage, doesn't chase, doesn't strike out, and puts hitting the ball in good angles. He's not in some trouble territory in terms of ground balls. So for a good team, like we're talking about the Tigers right now, but we could be talking about the Royals in this division too. And I think we're going to be. I think there might be 2 teams from the Central in the postseason at this rate.
No, good division in general. Also, look, I mean, the glove with Garcia is there as well. So like what you see there, it's interesting. We talked about kind of pro scouting and acquiring deGrom, although I don't know how much, nuance was needed there. You knew he was one of the best players around. But then you talk about the amateur scouting in terms of getting a college player to the Athletics, international here with Garcia, amateur international. Now to the pro international side with Jung Hoo Lee, the grandson of the Win. His dad was the son of the Win, played in NPB as a South Korean. So he's actually born in Japan, but he is South Korean. Similar profile when you just look at different position, but when you look at the way he's getting it done to Wilson, as far as a lot of contact, he's not exactly, registering these huge bat speeds, this huge exit velo, but he's not striking out, not walking, just a lot of contact, great athlete, better athlete than Wilson, really 96th percentile base runner, made some nice plays at center field. A guy like Jung Hoo Lee, who you don't know how it's going to, I can't think of too many center fielders that have come from Asia. I always thought Ichiro, you think he would play there because of his speed, but that never happened. So people weren't exactly sure what was going to happen with Jung Hoo Lee, but now we're seeing some consistent production.
I think Ichiro could have played a lot of really good center field. I think it was just the distribution. I think in the Franklin Gutierrez was like one of the best back in that day. So there's that first. I think what you're seeing is a maturation of the KBO as like a real offensive league where guys like you have to get good at hitting. We had Lewis Brinson in here talking about Japanese pitching. Korean pitching is crafty pitching too. You have to figure out how to hit there. Even though it's a whole different brand of baseball, there's a lot of really good pitching there. So you get a lot of iron sharpening iron here. And Jung Hoo Lee gets there in a completely different way. I agree with you in terms of versus Jacob Wilson in terms of tapping into the power. It's more of a start open, gather, but one kind of toe tap hold, not even a toe tap, but just a hold and an explosion. But what I'm seeing is a really good ability to lift the baseball with pretty solid power. So those things add up to good results. And what's interesting here is the spark. At 23 years old, in the KBO, had a spike in homers. Just like had a big power production jump there. And I'm sure that buoyed a lot of, him going into major league free agency as a player that could plug and play transition, and I don't want to say that it's unprecedented. I remember Shin-Soo Choo came in and had a lot of really good years, made a lot of really good money as a Korean player making the transition. But this one seems like it's here to stay, and that's a good team right now that he's like one of the main engines for, one of the main drivers for, and there's value coming all across the field. Hitting, but especially base running. He's not just the defense. He's like an elite level base runner, as well as providing some power, high squared up percentage, doesn't strike out. Interesting. We spent a lot of time talking about how acceptable the strikeout is, and we just spent time talking about 3 guys who have completely limited striking out and are finding major league value. So showing that there's a path that doesn't involve striking out to major league value. I don't know that path equals most dollars. I think homers, extra base, high on base, ball in the seats, Juan Soto kind of area, that's still where you want to live. But I don't know, to all the guys that hate on how much strikeouts there are, here are guys like doing it differently and having success.
And look, we're talking about center fielder, we're talking about shortstop
player.
But no, this could be, talk about stars. He has the nickname with the grandson of the Win. That's great. He's in San Francisco. Obviously, he's an Asian player from Asia. Yep. So geographically, he's in a marquee franchise. They love guys like this. A lot of Giants hats right now in Seoul and in Korea, I'll bet. As a result of this. 100%. And I feel of all the franchise that loves their play, like the Giants, when they get a guy they like Kung Fu Panda, they really rally behind that player. I could see this guy just being a superstar, not just in South Korea, but in San Francisco for a long time. So I love that he's succeeding. I think it's good for baseball, like you said. Anybody who goes in and plays San Francisco at that park on a really nice night, like you're like, okay, this has got to be one of the better baseball experiences in baseball. So when they have a star level player, the Bonds era,
the Kung Fu Panda you mentioned, Buster Posey, Madison Bumgarner. Like when the Giants are good, I'll say this to a lot of teams, but they're also one of the marquee franchises in baseball. It's better for them to be good than non-contending, and they've been pretty good for a little while here. And they went through a front office shift recently, which is, I think to me, doesn't get talked about enough. Like I think the Giants have corrected in the direction of Buster Posey, for example, here from a front office standpoint as their president of baseball ops. That is I don't know if it's a correction to an analytically driven era, but it's an appreciation still for the more human player, former player, catcher experience. And I have a lot of good friends, Dan Greenlee and Hadi Rod and guys, Joe Caro, that are working there as well. And so there's a lot of good things happening with the San Francisco Giants. And I think they're going to be deserving of one of these team spotlights if they weren't already here, just because they're, I think, one of the more overperforming teams. And I think they do a really job with their pro scouting right now, especially in this case, international pro scouting, because you're scouting a pro league in Korea. It's different than scouting amateur players and all that. So kudos to the Giants. Like, I want to talk about them more in depth soon.
And just procedurally, would the top man in pro scouting be the one, banging the table for a Jung Hoo Lee as far as in the room? Like, how does that work? Like even though you might have an international amateur and a professional amateur, the person representing this player in the room and saying, this is the guy I want, that would be the head of pro scouting.
It should be, but it depends. Some teams, like all their anything international is kind of in that camp, and the lead person on that front will make that case. Somebody's got to make the case or justify, or especially in the guys that are not so obvious of a target. And I don't think he was a good player, but not an obvious, like we're going to, Sasaki, Yamamoto, right, Ohtani. I don't think he had that level of consensus by any means. So it depends, because some teams split that. Some teams just have an international professional department and an international amateur department, because they're two different ways of operating. International professional, I think NPB in Japan, KBO, Taiwan, the Cuban players you always have to be mindful for in terms of professionals. But sometimes that structure flows all through the professional scouting side, which is the scouting department that scouts other teams. Now, other teams in this case is KBO and NPB. I've seen that happen as well, so it depends on the structure here. But I think it all filters and funnels through the pro scouting side one way or another, because you're doing a professional scouting evaluation. You're not doing an amateur scouting evaluation. So in this case, pro scouting's got to get involved at some point, I think. But the best ones have both pro and international kind of coming together on, like, okay, what amateur process did you have from when he was coming up? Let's merge that now. If you're already the one going to Japan, let's give you pro coverage to see this guy, or going to Korea. Let's give you the international director that maybe he's only going to see amateurs. Maybe he'll go in and give a layer of evaluation on a professional player. So teams kind of mix and match it in terms of how their Asian operations are structured, but it's still a pro evaluation. So I would imagine the pro scouting director is either driving this ship or driving this argument, or at least taking his pro scouting department's filter to whatever the amateur international department's bringing up. And this one feels like all hands on deck at a major league free agency level.
And it's kind of like college scouting too, right? In that they're playing games. It's not showcases and stuff like that, but you have to project, how does this league translate here, right? So it's kind of interesting, the different ways to get to a baseball team and all the different approaches you need to use for these different players. It's not one size fits all.
I love it. I love that you can construct your team in all of these different ways, because to me it puts into question you have to be bad to then get good draft picks to then be good. No, you have international departments, you have pro scouting departments that can always be doing things at different. So he gets signed at 25 or 26. Right? As a international free agent. Any team could have participated and gotten Jung Hoo Lee. Now they weren't a bad team that would then have a good draft pick, and therefore you got to wait for that bad team to stockpile draft picks. No, international can contribute. Pro scouting, minor league free agency can contribute. Major league free agency. How many times have we seen a guy on a 1-year basis go somewhere and establish, and the Rays do this all the time. where like a guy shows up for 1 year in the Dodgers and he'll make himself some money in that 1 year by having one really good year. Who scouted that to like have an immediate impact that you didn't draft that player? You didn't pay him some crazy free agency dollars. Like the Gleyber Torres, for example, kind of a middle tier free agent, having a huge outcome. Here, Jung Hoo Lee is kind of the equivalent of a middle tier free agent doing day one, like big war impact. And so I don't know. I contest that you have to be bad in baseball to then be good. I really do. I think it's a little easier, but I like the lottery stuff where it incentivizes you from not being at the bottom of the league, and nobody wants to be there. But I think some teams express like a different comfort of being in that tier when you can supplement all these different ways to have a good major league roster.
I mean, look, if you just go by the draft, so you think about football or basketball, the other kind of sports where you talk about tanking a lot.
Yeah.
That first overall pick correlates a lot with success, and it does in baseball too. Sure. But I mean, if you look at the best players in the game, the absolute elite, at least let's look at the Americans. I mean, Skubal was what round was he picked, right?
I think it was 6th round or something like that.
Aaron Judge was not a top 10 pick despite having college resume and looking like a giant. You know, he still was someone that any team with any record could have had, right? So and I'm just talking about the absolute best players in the game. You do have your Bobby Witts and things like that, but yeah, there are pathways that don't involve getting the number one pick.
Right. Scouting is hard. We don't have this figured out even at the advanced college player. Like the advanced college player, like there's a wide range of outcomes, and then this list is really long. Like I remember watching in that 2019 draft. I remember I saw Hunter Bishop play against Adley Rutschman, and Hunter Bishop hasn't like gone on, but man, was that electric to watch. Was that just like, how could this not work? He was making good swing decisions. He was striking out a little bit, and I've deeper appreciation for high percentage of strikeouts translating into big league ball. But it was just electric. It's like you hope this works, because if you insert that, that's like, and it didn't work out that way. This is a college player playing in a big conference, having big numbers against good competition, but there's other things going on as well. So scouting to me is hard. We get these wrong all the time, and the younger we do it, the more we get them wrong. But even that shows you, if we're still getting college advanced players not perfect, imagine a 15 or a 14-year-old kid, 15-year-old kid, 17-year-old, 18-year-old kid, and this arc of 7 years in advance. It's hard, man. Like the scouts have a really tough job, and they have to say things with a lot of conviction when you don't know. You have to say and speak with conviction like but a lot of times you can't truly know what's going on between the ears of a kid or with a family, or if there's how does this kid, who's in his ear? What's he prioritizing? What's his base education level? Is he able to absorb? Is he speaking English yet? Like all these things can throttle up or throttle down a career. And I don't know, that's why I love scouting, because it's hard as hell. And any scout will sit here and tell you. Some are like, oh, okay, that guy's really good. But Skubal's in the 9th round, by the way. The 9th round of a draft, like you got to have some good processes to clip this or catch this, or a good scout that identified, it's still making a case for the player. I think that's underrated too. In a draft room, once you get past a certain point in the draft, let's say the 7th round, now you start evaluating your own scouts. Be like, which of my internal, even though the process or the model is saying this guy is at the top, who are my better scouts that are giving me like, hey, I really like this guy, he's still available here. That sort of stuff starts to increase in the room, and there's a subjective nature to it. Like a scouting director can really benefit from like, all right, do I have a veteran scout that's taken players here before that is really advocating or fighting for this player? That can like kind of get one of your players picked in a draft room, right? As opposed to a rookie scout doing it for the first time. Are you going to like put all your chips in that basket? Maybe the model says do it anyway. But that's interesting too. Like the scout that has to make a case for the player that it wants selected. And models have been marginalizing this a little more and a little more. You get deeper into the draft with your model. But the model maybe showed Skubal here. Sometimes it happens where the area scout doesn't have him in high. And the analytics group comes in and be like, hey, look at this guy still available right now. Take that one. and then the scouting director will make their choice. But it comes down to some kind of scouting no matter what. And a lot of the time, makeup is only like the competitor stuff, the between the ears, the gut feel, good face, all these things that we talk about. That's the scout. That's a very human touch. It's hard for the model to grab or wrap its arms around. So, I'm sure the scout that had Tariq Skubal is like, yeah, man, there was something in there. This guy was different. And maybe the stuff or the strikes weren't good enough at that point. But he's the number one pitcher in baseball right now, out of the 9th round of a major league. 9th round, just for reference, 9th round isn't like other places. This is the 255th pick in the draft. 254 guys were deemed more valuable as a long-term bet than Tariq Skubal. And we sit here today, he's the number one pitcher on everybody. Like, if you had a fantasy draft of all GMs, how high would this guy go right now? Pretty high. And he was a college player. So it tells us we don't have this shit figured out.
And the other side is Skeens, who is probably the most sure thing there was, and it panned out. So it's like all the way in between. What gets me is when you get to those middle rounds, is it the tiny percent that the guy could be a superstar, or do you go with maybe a higher percentage that the guy will be a regular? Like, in other words, you say, hey, listen, I want to swing huge on this pick. I know it's probably not going to work out, but if it hits, we're going to look like geniuses. Or, hey, this pick has a pretty good chance of being somebody that we can at least put on a lineup card.
It's where subjectivity gets introduced. If you ask me, I want upside all the way through. Like, chase upside with every pick that you have, like, best possible scenario. But your team also has, like, maybe you're historically really good at selecting this profile. Accommodate for that into your draft. There's a diversity of, like, type of pick in a draft. Whereas if you get 2 high upside guys with your first 2, maybe the safer bet is to, like, stack a few college bats that are safer. Although safer usually ends up not being safer.
Oh, yeah.
There's no such thing as a safe major league bet, even at the top of collegiate baseball. That doesn't really exist. Therefore, I think you should chase the upside. Now, I was always more or less more inclined to take the risk on the player. That doesn't always benefit you. That doesn't. I would have been the type. I was excited and still wish that the Lewis Brinson, Monte Harrison, Isan Diaz, like, those were exciting players. It didn't work out. That was not the scouting went a different direction. But I lean more on that side of, like, chasing the upside, because I think it's the only way to get it. Now, other models that are more conservative and more like, no, this has a higher percentage of working out, that also works. I think the teams that do both, that are nimble enough to do both, are the ones that are the most successful. I think the Dodgers do this really well. They chase high upside players, but their process is they can select from an already filtered pool of really good high upside players that are also already, like, between the buoys of, like, okay, this is a low probability of this not working out because he does this, 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 and this. And then we're going to shoot for best player and highest athleticism within that. They can do that because they have the patience at the big league level that have a relevant major league team. Sometimes you have to pick in the draft to supplement a shorter window. So you pick up a college player. You're not going to stack that draft with all high school picks. But then you have guys like Bobby Witt that just get there out of high school in no time. I would say those guys are more obvious, but the big leagues is littered, like we've talked about, top of their position players that weren't top of their position draftees, international signings. This happens rampantly in Latin America. We're just doing a longer projection window. So it's Ronald Acuna, 100 grand, Luis Castillo, 15. We can go on this journey for a long time. I don't have Maikel Franco's bonus offhand, but I don't think it was very high either. So scouting's hard.
Yeah, and then it's like every franchise is different. So can we acquire, if this guy works, in the 40% chance this guy hits, or probably lower, that this guy hits big, even if it's a first-round pick, can we acquire this kind of player in free agency? It's probably not going to happen based on what we are as a market. So
harder, more expensive.
Right.
Yeah.
So the only way we're going to get this kind of guy is drafting him and it works. And then these solid doubles,
right.
That's pro scouting, right?
Well, and we're missing the big fat part in between, which is player development. They go into your minor league system. Very few, if any, players are going straight from one to the other. So there's a lot that happens in that player development part that can quicken, slow down, falter, be indifferent. I've actually grown to the point of, like, you just can't be bad for your players. You don't have to be the best and give your player everything. A lot of guys get there. We're talking about players from the whole spectrum of major league organizations. They get there. There's 30 different ways to do this, and teams do it 30 different ways. So I think you just can't be hurting your players. So long as you're not doing that, players can get better, and they do get better. It's a credit to off-season instructors and things like that. They're at their premium now too. Driveline, tread athletics, all sorts of different entities in this space that are off-season development. So guys are getting better in the off-seasons at quicker rates, but that's all player development. You can scout a guy, great. He could be an elite level talent at the time of the draft. But then you have to go through the minor league progression. And what does your team or organization do during that time? That can move the needle a lot too.
Do no harm. It's like a doctor. Let's finish here. We got some more stuff to get to. We'll get to another show. I want to finish on kind of the oldest school of scouting, which is high school player.
Yeah.
Right? George Lombard Jr., guy you're familiar with, out of Miami, went to our rival high school, Gulliver Prep. 24 was not his best season at the plate, but bounces back in a huge way now, just murdering high A, now up to double A as a 19-year-old. Of course, we know his father. His brother is a prospect now, probably going to get drafted in a very similar, higher spot. So what can you tell us about the Lombard family and George Lombard Jr.?
Elite level athleticism. I spent a lot of time with George Lombard Sr. He was actually the outfield and base running coordinator when I first got my first internship in Fort Myers with the Red Sox. So we were all together at the complex level. He was overseeing all of the outfielding and base running for the minor league system at the time. A lot of good players have come out of that, during that time. And I remember talking to George, and George himself, Senior, was in a second-round pick by the Braves and was also an All-American running back that could have gone to Georgia. I remember I went to his house one time, and he had the All-Americans for that year, and it's his picture and Orlando Pace, kind of right next Hall of Fame, left tackle, and he was at that caliber, committed to go to Georgia. They tried to get him to go, but he chose baseball and dealt with some injury stuff, but got to the big leagues. And he was that guy early in the weight room, was just like a beast in the weight room, even as a outfield and base running coordinator. Just really,
he still looks like I saw him the other day at UM.
And actually, George and Jacob, his sons, I was in the major league staff with the Red Sox, and I remember his son, especially George, was 9 years old, small, skinny kid, shagging balls in the outfield, and now I see him, and it's whoa, that's a prospect. That reminds me of Carlos Correa, that type of bigger guy that's not the silky smooth right off the bat, although he does some things very smooth, but big, physical, imposing, athletic background with his dad, and his mom's a good athlete too, and he's the Yankees' first-round pick. And I think there's a lot of guys that can tell you the pressure of being the Yankees' first selection in a draft is spotlight magnified. Went through a down year in 2024, but he's a high school player trying to adjust to big league pitching. And he's now in Double-A now after dominating high A at this age and level. And it looks right. You watch these swings and it's whoa. I don't know. He's having his moment, and he was selected 20th or somewhere in the 20s, pick-wise. And then to have that progress into Double-A with an already good major league team, Yankees, we talked about the Yankees earlier on in the year. They got some good things going, not only in scouting, but in player development. And I think George Lombard Jr. he's going to get there fast because it just looks right already. He has a good year in Double-A, or a good finish to the year in Double-A. You can start the year in Triple-A, and you have a 22-year-old, 21-year-old core position player for the Yankees. I think that would be optimal scenario for them. And I think what's most interesting is that Jacob, the youngest one, not only is he going to get picked, he's going to get picked in the top 10 picks of the draft. And he's a freak athlete himself, soccer player. There's videos of him doing these somersault gymnastic backflips. And you watch that kid swing. That's legit. So kind of athleticism scattered throughout that family. It's the Salas, the Jose Salas family, and Andrew Salas, but on the domestic side, and from Miami, which is awesome.
Yeah, I mean, he's gotten to the point now where you start, I don't say penciling on the lineup, but playing with lineups, right? As far as in that future middle infield, near future middle infield, Volpe's having polarizing year, let's say. His defense still good, but obviously that's the topic of discussion up there. How do you see him fitting in, or where can he fit in? What are the different options you see with him in this Yankees middle infield, assuming he continues on this trajectory, and we're talking about big leagues pretty soon?
There's a veteran nature to the shortstop position, I think Volpe will have have control of that position for as long as it's not in his control anymore. So I think third base makes a lot of sense in terms of integration, second base. But I can see George also, as he gets closer, hey, you pick up an outfield glove, let's start to work this in, because we don't know where the spot will be. I think we might be a hair early for that discussion as to how he fits, because the Yankees will always do, if you don't have something now, you'll go get it. So they're not waiting. But if you have a high-level prospect that's really impactful, it's on the horizon. So I wouldn't see first base being out of the question. I wouldn't see outfield, the DH, because Judge can play the position, like the field for you. I think shortstops give you a range of outcomes, like Javi Baez, to be able to play in different spots that other prospects maybe don't. So it's kind of a good problem to have, in my opinion.
And I don't know if there's a name on the trade deadline that even makes sense, but would you ever see a scenario, I'll say ever because we know never say never, but do you see a scenario where the Yankees trying to win now with Judge playing the way he is, make a move where they include a George Lombard Jr., or is he reaching, and look, I know this is very speculative right now, but is he reaching the point where it's like you cannot trade this guy, even if it means a player that can help you win a World Series for the New York Yankees? Or is it like, where is he at in that hierarchy?
I wouldn't trade this guy. It's me. But I think that first of all, it's your first round pick. You always hold that tighter no matter what. It's your guy. You picked him. You developed him. You're going to call your amateur scouting. Brian Cashman's going to call his scouting director and be like, hey, we're thinking about moving. The scouting director's going to have fits. Don't move this guy. XYZ. Right? Player development probably loves them. You call your farm director. It's like, hey, we're thinking about, no, don't. There's no ceiling on this. That's what I see here. There's no ceiling on this. It could hurt you. Right? And the Yankees don't have this dearth of prospect capital that they can't make a move anyway. Sometimes teams suffer from this. If you have a top-heavy farm system, this happened with the A's and Luzardo. It's kind of like Luzardo was an outlier in their system at that point, where he's like, they don't really have much below that at the time, but they have this, or they're taking Soderstrom off the table, but they have, so you can go kind of pick to that one. If you have a depth, you can still make volume type of deals. The Yankees could still package 2-3 prospects to get what they need without needing to go to the top deal from the top of their system. I don't think they're moving George Lombard Jr. I wouldn't. I think it could hurt you because there's a guy with those tools and that physicality, and now he's hitting at a premium position. No, you don't let that go easily.
Look, they had a Miami infielder that did pretty good for him up there, so we'll see if history repeats itself.
Yeah.
Or like and subscribe to this channel, 786 Sports, El Big League Show. We'll be on every single Monday. Appreciate you.